There's an author and mental health coach out there. Her name's Minna B. And she states being held accountable is an act of generosity and compassion. It is a gift that someone gives us to correct our wrongs, unlearn, and do better for the sake of our own growth. It might be uncomfortable, but it's worth the discomfort.
Leaders are not born in a womb. They are forged through heat, pressure, and a whole lot of sweat. The Fire Forged Leader podcast serves the audience through exploring leadership at work, in the community, and with the family, using a practical perspective and real-life experiences from the host, Steve Baumgartner, and his guests in the Forge. Now, it's time to enter the Forge with the Fire Forged Leader.
What is up, leaders? Welcome to the Fire Forged Leader podcast. I'm Steve Baumgartner, your host and founder, and I would like to take you on a journey of the Forge, where we're going to explore some lessons learned on the front lines of leadership. I happened across this quote the other day, and I've been just sitting here dwelling on it ever since. Thinking about accountability, what it means to be held accountable, how you hold yourself accountable, and ultimately, how other people hold you accountable. I've thought about what others that I look up to, like Bedros Keuilian, has to say on the topic. And he states that he's not very graceful with calling people out, like for being overweight or anything else. But he does it because he wants more from them. And he knows that they're capable of so much more. But he can realize that he's not very graceful with it. And I think that's a point that we need to consider. Now, holding yourself or others accountable isn't easy. It generally gets met with some sort of negative emotion, like hurt, anger, or even hostility. But when I saw these words from Minna B, I thought to myself, damn, that is one of the most true statements that I have ever heard. Accountability, it's a huge act of generosity and compassion. It is a gift. So why does it get met with such negative emotions all the time? Well, my short answer is we live in a society that has been feeding bullshit up each other's asses. We feed each other's lies to make each other feel good. And we've done this for far too long that we've really lost grip on reality. Now, that was a short answer. Let's go to the long one. The long answer that I come up with is that we're really missing a few components. Generally, when you look at gift giving, we only give gifts to people that we have relationships with. We don't go around just handing gifts to people on the street. We don't go up to some random person, someone else's wife, and give them a gift. We'd probably get punched in the nose. When we look at that relational aspect, relationships are also built on trust. Many times when one person calls out another in today's world, it's not from a place of generosity and compassion. Rather, it comes from hate and violent outburst. Go take a stroll on social media whenever there's any sort of election or political thing going on, and you'll see exactly what I mean. And through this, we have conditioned ourselves to feel negative emotions around it. And of course, there's always people around that reinforce those bad emotions. They just keep on digging and digging and digging. And in today's acceptance models, we have to accept everyone for who they are and what they do. Oh, dear Lord, you can't call anybody out. That's fat shaming, right? Or you're picking on their character. No. Sometimes, many times, when we're calling people out, it's from a place of love that we want to see them do better. We want to see them live up to their capabilities. So let's talk a bit about how you go about giving and receiving accountability. But first, let's talk about what accountability really is. If you look it up in the dictionary, what it says is the quality of being responsible for one's action or performance. So if I break this down, I see three different arenas where accountability lives. We hold ourselves accountable, we hold others accountable, and other people hold us accountable. So let me repeat those. We hold ourselves accountable, other people hold us accountable, and we hold other people accountable. So ultimately, I've been very blessed over time to have the experiences that I have had in my life. The bad times have really taught me a lot, and I've been able to grow through them, and they have taught me a ton over time. I've also had the opportunity to be a part of a couple different groups where holding yourself accountable and holding others accountable is the center of what we do. And I'll tell you what, it is powerful when you have these type of groups that operate in this fashion. Within these groups, I've seen people rise and fall. And some people are better at shedding the world off from their back and being able to live in that accountability world. And they rise to some momentous levels. But then there's others. There's others who want to follow the way that the world believes that you should act towards accountability discussions. And they fall. They never go anywhere. They fall. So let's talk about these three arenas, right? The first one is holding yourself accountable. Sounds easy enough, right? It's really the hardest of the three because it's the onus is all on you. But first, before you can hold yourself accountable to, you got to understand what the hell you're going to hold yourself accountable to. You got to draw the lines in the sand. And you guys hear me talk about vision all the time. This is where the vision for your own life has to come into play. If you have painted that picture in your mind of what you want to look like as a person, as a father, as a leader at work, I don't care what it is, you've drawn your line in the sand. If you're living anything else right now that does not live up to that, you're out of integrity. You've stepped over the line and you need to check yourself. You need to hold yourself accountable. So, for example, to be able to call yourself out for being overweight, to understand even that you are overweight, you have to have a standard for your weight. Now, I don't always look at weight in my life. When I'm building, I look at body fat. When I'm not building, I simply go by weight because it's easier. So let's just talk about that weight portion because it's a simpler conversation. I, at 6'2", 6'3", whatever I am, probably 6'2" because I'm getting older, right? So I'm shrinking. But when I am at my prime, I'm a pretty stocky dude. When I'm at my prime, I'm in between 235 and 240 pounds. All right. However, when I hit 245, it is go time. That is my line in the sand. That is when I'm going to say, enough's enough. I'm not stepping another step past that. I got to change something. All right. So once you have the line in the sand, you cannot, and I cannot stress this enough, but you cannot negotiate with yourself. You just must not do it. Once you start negotiating, you've already lost every bit of accountability you have with yourself. It's an integrity discussion at that point. Are you holding on to your own integrity? You're lying to yourself if you step over that line. So once we draw the line in the sand, we don't negotiate. Now we got to get to work. It's go time. We got to get out there and do something about it. If you're overweight, you need to dial in your nutrition, right? You can't sit idle. You need to hold on to your integrity. It is one of the most important things you can ever have. It is the most important thing you could ever have. So it's not easy holding yourself accountable, but the steps are very easy. You draw the line in the sand, you don't negotiate, and you get your ass moving. Now, the other ones are probably easier because you don't hold aloneness, but the steps are a little bit more intricate. So, before we get to holding other people accountable, let's talk about this idea of others holding you accountable. All right. So, the onus, once again, is not fully on you, it's on the other person to bring it up. And then it's on us on how we react. And our natural instinct is to put up our defenses. And when given the opportunity, we're going to strike back. We do it all the time, right? If our spouse calls us out for how we're parenting the kids, we strike. If someone calls us out for something at work, we get defensive. It happens all the time. So I talk about it all the time, but we need to slow ourselves down. We need to slow down that impulse so that we can process what the other person is saying. But more importantly, why are they saying it? And I'll tell you that sometimes there's people out there who are just assholes. And they say something like, hey, the button on those pants is going to fly off and hit me in the eye. Yeah, they're assholes. I get it. But other times, people are going to approach you with a different message. Like, hey, Steve, I'm worried about you, man. It looks like you've been putting on quite a bit of weight lately, and I can see it's wearing on you. You don't look healthy. Is everything okay? But either way, I'm going to tell you, there's a flag on the track. There's a caution. Someone has brought something that you may or may not be aware of. And we should look at that and consider those statements. The only difference between the two is on the first statement, we should just shed what they said, right? The meanness, the cruelty, or whatever in the statement, just shed that off. But look at the statement, just like you would on the second one. Is there a reason for change? Now, the second one, we should thank them for their feedback. And then if we need to, we can move into a conversation with them. Like, hey, Joe, you're right. You're right, man. I have been putting on a little bit of weight. It is wearing on me. It's affecting me at home. It's affecting me with my wife, my kids. I don't have the energy like I used to. I don't know what's going on, you know? And that conversation can lead to something more, right? But either way, we need to take a look at the comments and see if there's any credence. If there is credence to the statements, we need to make a decision. And this is where we take full full ownership of this. Is there something that I need to move on? Is my weight really a problem? Well, if it's being mentioned, more than likely it is. And if the answer is yes, move. Sorry about that. But that's what we got to do is we got to pick up and we got to go. And then we need to remember that the accountability, either way that it comes, is a gift. And we need to treat it as such. Now, the first example is one of those bad gifts you might get at a white elephant exchange at work. You look at it and you're like, oh, thanks. Right. But it's still a gift, right? Someone cared enough to where they mentioned it to you, whether it came out like they were caring or not. They wouldn't say anything to you if they didn't. The second is more like receiving a gift from your spouse of 20 years who knows you inside and out and hits that special button with the gift. But overall, accountability is a gift. Treat it as such. Let's move into this idea of holding someone else accountable now. So there's really two different ways that this can happen, right? The first one is when someone has brought you into the fold, has asked, either directly or indirectly, I don't care, has asked for you to be part of that conversation. The second one is simply from your good intentions for someone else. All right, so let's go through the first one. So this first one is agreed upon. This is when someone else has invited you into the conversation. They have told you about something that they're trying to do. So they have invited you into the conversation. And now what we can do is we can talk within that conversation. So I'm going to give you an example of this. Recently, my wife started to fast. She does it for both health as well as spiritual reasons. And she has told me what her plan is. So with her telling that, telling me that, excuse me, she has invited me in to help hold her accountable, either directly or indirectly. So overall, this is generally an easier spot to be in. If I want to enter that conversation, for example, I can ask questions like, hey, honey, how did your fast go today? Because I know she's fasting today. If she answers, Steve, not so good. I didn't make it all the way through dinner. You can take that opportunity to advance the conversation. You can talk with that person, right? I can talk with my wife and go, you know what, honey? I get it. It's defeating when you don't make it, but you did fast for 2/3 of the day. So what are some of those triggers, or why do you think you didn't make it to dinner? And you can start that conversation and ultimately contribute to it, right? So she drinks bone broth. So for an example, she might tell me, well, I drank my thermos of bone broth when I was out and about for breakfast, and I got really, really hungry for lunch, and I just didn't make it through dinner, right? So I could say something like, have you thought about maybe splitting it into halves and drinking half of your bone broth for breakfast and half of it for lunch? That way you got the fat in that to sustain you further. Something like that. You can have those conversations. But you also need to understand the person that you're in this informal contract with, right? This accountability contract. Everybody speaks a little bit different language. I understand my wife real well. And in these conversations, She needs love and support. However, if this were my friend Dan, shout out to Dan. Anyways, he would expect me to call his ass out hard and fast and smack him around a little bit for not living in integrity. And you got to remember that. You got to remember that everybody on this planet really speaks a different language. And we need to understand what that language is when we enter into this accountability discussion. So, to recap on that, you need to understand the language. You've already been invited into the conversation, so engage in it. And then contribute when you can. The second way of holding someone else accountable is when you have their best interests at heart, but they haven't brought you into the conversation. So let's say your buddy has put on some weight. He gets winded as hell going up a flight of stairs, and on the 11th step, there's a landing, and he needs to rest to catch his breath. I could approach him and say, dude, you need to get your fat ass up them stairs. Damn, why don't you do something about that weight? Yeah, that approach probably isn't going to end up with any good results, is it? It doesn't show that you care about them. It doesn't show that you want something better, right? Even though you may. I guarantee you that this person is probably already feeling like he's lost because he can't make it up the stairs. So we need to keep that in mind. So let's take that same scenario and look at it from a different angle. What if I were to say, hey, man, I'm worried about you. I can see it on your face that you get disappointed that you can't make it up those stairs. I've also heard that you get disappointed in yourself when your kids want you to play and you can't sustain. If you're willing, I would love to give you a hand finding the right nutrition plan that works for you so that you can shed some of those pounds and play with your kids longer so that you can make it up those stairs. And if you want to work out, hey, I'm game. Let's go work out together. You up to it, man? You know what? This person may say no, but it's in their mind now. And once that it's in their mind, when they've hit that point where they want to change, it's going to bounce around in their mind on who offered the help. And they'll know how to reach out and they know who to talk to now. Or they could say yes and take you up on it right then and there. So looking at it, there's two different ways, right? There's a way that you get invited in. I already recapped that. The second way that we hold people accountable, we have to do out of love and compassion, right? They cannot receive it as a gift unsolicited unless we do it with love and compassion. But once again, we got to know their language. We need to speak their language. And guys, I'm going to give you a little bit of a personal thing right now. I had a previous employee, and as y'all know, I dropped 80 pounds. I started getting really healthy. I started working out every day. And through those talks about health and exercise and answering questions and talking about things, one of my previous employees got motivated enough, and she is kicking ass on her health journey right now. She tells me all the time, both in person as well as on social media, how much she appreciates me for leading her in that manner. And I didn't even know I was leading her at the time. We just had open, honest discussions about it. And I'll tell you, it is a gift to me as much as it is to her because just through speech and just through talking, there was enough accountability in there that she picked up and moved. So to wrap this all up, we need to look at accountability as a gift, just like Minna B says. And either you care enough about yourself or someone else cares about you enough that they want to see you successful in this life. So please receive accountability as the gift that it is. Now, leaders, you have come here once again to listen to this message, but listening is not enough. What are you going to apply this week, this month, and this year? We got to get out there and move, people. We can't just listen to podcasts. So remember, when you become a better leader, you become a better spouse, a better parent, a better coworker, and ultimately that person that other people want to follow. I want you to grow in your leadership skills. And I want you to do it for your family, for your community, and the ones that you lead at work. But I also want you to do it for yourself. If you appreciate what you heard here today, I invite you once again to leave a rating and review. That helps us bolster up in the ratings so we can get this message out to more and more people. And I want you to smash that subscribe button on whatever podcast app you're currently listening to. I don't want you to miss a single episode. Continue to join us here in the Forge as we bring you lessons learned on the front lines of leadership. We've had some amazing guests on the Fire Forge Leader. We've had Drago Zirin. We've had Ray Cashcare. We've had Tony Ojeda. We've had just a plethora of people, Nick Lavery. And we're going to continue to have more and more people. At the middle of October, I'm going to start releasing the series that I've been building in the background around counter human exploitation, where we're going to have survivors, parents of survivors, people that are working on the front lines of this atrocity, people that are helping others heal, technology people, and many others. So keep on coming back. There's a wealth of information coming at you, but it only matters when we apply it. So go out there and lead with intent, my friends.
You have just experienced the heat and pressure of the Forge. Remember, words without action are meaningless. Now, after the heat of the Forge, shape your thoughts, quench your brain, then put your new tools to use, adding to your leadership. Tune in next week for more lessons from the Forge.